Before we dive in, if you love stories where humans quietly outsmart the galaxy's deadliest, make sure to smash that like button, comment your favorite human moment, and subscribe for more epic interstellar adventures. Now let's jump into the story. The bar smelled of recycled air and alien sweat, a faint metallic tang lingering over polished surfaces. Marcus Kane moved behind the counter with an unhurried rhythm, his hands precise as he cleaned glasses and refilled bottles. His demeanor suggested a man who had long ago abandoned excitement for routine, yet every glance he cast toward the door hinted at vigilance. Every patron, from the neon-skinned Gloverians to the hulking, three-armed Crestons, assumed he was just a quiet Earth bartender, harmless and entirely human. They were wrong. Across the room, alien guards leaned against the walls, their segmented armor reflecting the dim lights. They were alert, scanning the crowd for someone, or something, that could disrupt the fragile order of the station. The news screens overhead flashed an alert: human assassin suspected in vicinity. Extreme caution advised. Most patrons ignored it, but the guards' eyes flickered toward each other, tension coiling in their stances. Marcus noticed, of course. He always noticed. A group of alien mercenaries entered, their boots clanging against the metal floor. Laughter followed them, crude and loud, echoing across the bar. Humans, one of them sneered, a Gloverian with mottled cyan skin. Small, weak and fast to die. I heard one of yours is hiding here. Ha. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't need to. They believed themselves superior, and superiority made them careless. He poured a drink for a Creston in the corner, then another for a pair of humanoid traders who whispered in a dialect only a few humans on the station understood. His movements were smooth, deliberate, efficient. No one suspected the man behind the counter had once moved through entire battlefields unseen, leaving no evidence but empty beds, whispered rumors, and fear that carried across star systems. Marcus' mind wasn't on the drinks or the chatter, it was calculating, predicting, cataloging. The mercenaries laughed again, jostling a younger patron, and one of the alien guards moved to intervene. Marcus' hand rested lightly on the counter, fingertips brushing a small, concealed device. Nothing happened yet, and nothing would, unless necessary. He had long ago learned that observation, patience, and subtle influence were often more lethal than outright violence. One of the Gloverians reached toward a terminal behind the bar, curious and overconfident. Marcus handed him a drink with a calm smile. "Careful where you lean," he said softly, the words innocuous, but the slight press of his thumb on the counter sent a tiny surge through the panel. The terminal flickered, momentarily misreporting data. The Gloverian cursed and pulled back, unaware that the minor disruption had shifted the room's balance subtly in Marcus' favor. His eyes flicked to a cluster of guards near the door. They were trained, powerful, and vigilant, but they ignored him. Ignored the quiet human, the bartender who could dismantle them without drawing attention. That was the core of his advantage. Invisibility through underestimation. Humans were never the obvious threat. That role belonged to the obvious, the loud, the easily noticed. A young human courier entered, eyes wide, scanning the room nervously. Marcus recognized the pattern immediately. Someone being hunted, someone carrying information that could change the station's precarious equilibrium. He signaled subtly with a tilt of his head, an almost imperceptible gesture. The courier understood, sidling to a booth under the pretense of ordering a drink. Marcus returned to his work as if nothing had happened. The bar continued its deceptive calm, but beneath the surface, currents of danger shifted. Alien mercenaries argued among themselves, increasingly frustrated by minor anomalies they couldn't trace. Guards whispered into their communicators, scanning, searching, but always missing the quiet human orchestrating the subtle changes. Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile. Time passed. Drinks were served. Coins exchanged hands. And yet, Marcus' senses never faltered. Every vibration through the floor, every murmur in an unfamiliar tongue, every flicker of light in the corner of his eye was noted and catalogued. The humans in this sector might have been underestimated, but Marcus Kane was proof that underestimation was dangerous. The galaxy had a habit of ignoring humans until it was too late. As night crept over the station's outer ring, the mercenaries grew restless, their laughter fading into mutters of suspicion. Marcus polished the final glass, placing it precisely in its spot. The bar seemed quiet, peaceful, ordinary, but nothing about him or his presence was ordinary. The station had no idea that the man they dismissed as a bartender was Earth's most feared assassin. And as the door slid shut behind the last arriving shuttle, Marcus allowed his gaze to linger on the horizon. A storm of events was brewing, and when it hit, the galaxy would remember that humans, quiet and underestimated, could be deadlier than the fiercest alien patrol. The glass in his hand caught the light, a small glint in the shadows, as if the universe itself was acknowledging the calm before the storm. One sip, one subtle motion, and everything would change. The clamor of the bar intensified as the alien mercenaries settled in, their bulked forms casting long shadows across the polished floor. Marcus moved among them with the fluid certainty of a predator who had long ago learned that observation often outstripped action. He refilled a tray of drinks, each pour deliberate, measured, masking the calculation in his eyes. They laughed, raucous and careless, boasting of past conquests and of how easily a human life could be taken. "Your kind is fragile," one Gloverian jeered, slapping the bar in a display of power. "Easily broken, easily bought. I hear your assassin has a reputation. Where is he now?" Marcus' lips twitched, almost imperceptibly at the mention of his alias. His hand rested against the counter, hiding the subtle gesture that sent a pulse through the floor beneath them. A minor, almost imperceptible tremor, nothing enough to harm, but enough to shift an alien's balance, to seed doubt. One of the Crestons stumbled slightly, muttering a curse in his three-toned language. The mercenaries' confidence was palpable, but so was their ignorance. They assumed the room was their domain, that any threat would be obvious. They did not see Marcus. They did not perceive the careful calculation behind each casual movement, the way his eyes catalogued every weapon, every exit, every potential advantage. A young alien trader spilled a drink near their table, nervously apologizing. The Gloverians laughed and pushed him aside, unaware that Marcus had subtly guided the spill, the trajectory just enough to trigger a small chain of events. A terminal flickered. A security panel shorted momentarily. Nothing catastrophic, nothing traceable, but small ripples of disorder. The mercenaries' irritation grew, confusion settling in where confidence had been. Marcus leaned forward, polishing a glass. "Careful with that," he said softly to a mercenary who had nudged a serving droid. His tone was casual, conversational, harmless. Yet his words carried weight, a psychological subtlety that bent the mercenaries' focus inward. They could not see the trap forming because it was invisible, composed of timing, perception, and leverage. The guards nearby shifted position, their segmented armor clinking as they moved. Marcus noted the pattern. Their patrols were methodical, predictable. He could anticipate their next steps without needing to see them. Humans were often underestimated because they combined observation with intuition, a subtlety most species dismissed as weakness. A courier slipped through the crowd, a human barely visible among the chaos. Marcus recognized the movement immediately. The alien mercenaries did not notice, yet Marcus understood the significance. Someone carrying information vital to the balance of power. With a slight tilt of his head, imperceptible to anyone else, he signaled the courier. The human hesitated, then followed the unspoken instruction, slipping to a corner booth. Marcus returned to his work, polishing glasses with precision. The mercenaries, growing restless, began to argue among themselves. Their voices rose, tense with frustration over the inexplicable anomalies. "It should have been obvious," one barked. "Where is the human?" Marcus' response was silent, invisible. He guided the chaos without moving noticeably, manipulating the environment like a conductor shaping a symphony. A chair shifted under the weight of a distracted alien. A drink slid off a table and onto the floor. Nothing lethal, nothing overt, but every event combined to unsettle the mercenaries' confidence. They were losing control of a situation they believed they dominated. One of the Gloverians, large and impatient, leaned closer to Marcus' counter. "You see nothing human?" he demanded, voice dripping with condescension. "Nothing at all?" Marcus met his gaze, calm and steady, and shook his head ever so slightly. "I see everything," he said softly. It was a simple statement, almost innocuous, yet it carried the weight of truth. The mercenary recoiled, unsure whether he had been challenged or merely ignored. The alien guards continued their patrols, oblivious to the orchestrated disruptions around them. They assumed that the assassin, if present, would announce himself with violence. Marcus knew better. True power often operated quietly, invisibly, in the pauses, the gaps, the unremarkable moments. He allowed the mercenaries' frustration to build, feeding their arrogance into a trap they could not even recognize. Time in the bar stretched, each moment dense with tension. Marcus poured another drink, nodded at the courier, and let his mind run through contingencies. Every exit, every shadow, every possible variable had already been accounted for. The room might appear ordinary to anyone else, but Marcus saw the invisible threads of fate, the dominoes ready to fall. Finally, the mercenaries, exhausted by confusion, rose as one, preparing to confront imagined threats. Marcus remained still, a quiet presence behind the counter, every movement measured, every breath deliberate. He allowed them to believe the room was their domain, that the human they mocked was harmless, that the situation was under their control. And in that moment, a subtle smile touched his lips. The storm was not yet unleashed, but it was coming, and when it struck, the galaxy would remember that humans could turn invisibility into a weapon, patience into a trap, and perception into power. Marcus returned to polishing the glasses, calm, composed, unassuming, and entirely lethal. The alien mercenaries, convinced of their superiority, had yet to realize the predator in their midst. The station's corridors hummed with the low vibration of engines and the chatter of dozens of species, but Marcus moved through them as if the world were a quiet, predictable machine. The alien guards had expanded their search beyond the bar, sweeping through corridors and transit hubs, their movements deliberate yet predictable. Marcus observed from a shadowed alcove, noting patrol routes, timing, and the points where attention faltered. Humans thrived in the unnoticed spaces, and Marcus was living proof. He had a purpose beyond survival. The courier from the bar carried data critical to Earth's interests. Alien mercenaries had assumed that locating him would be simple, yet every step Marcus took created a lattice of misdirection. Surveillance drones passed overhead, their lenses scanning the crowds, but they saw nothing beyond the mundane, an unremarkable human walking among the station's inhabitants. A warning signal blinked on his concealed wrist device, subtle and silent. Marcus froze for a heartbeat, allowing a group of Creston guards to pass mere meters away. Their heavy boots resonated through the corridor, a slow rhythm that could have betrayed his presence, yet Marcus' body remained perfectly still, his breath steady. The guards scanned quickly, found nothing, and moved on, dismissing him entirely. He glanced toward the data courier, who had paused in a side tunnel, eyes darting nervously. Marcus signaled with a flick of his hand. The courier obeyed without question, stepping into the shadows behind a maintenance panel. To anyone else, it was ordinary. To Marcus, it was a critical maneuver, an unseen shield around the fragile information they carried. The alien mercenaries had underestimated the humans' adaptability. Marcus had anticipated their route through the station and had arranged small distractions to thin their focus. A robotic cleaner tripped over a loose cable, sparking a minor alarm. A bulkhead panel clicked open, drawing attention for a brief moment. Every small anomaly was a thread he tugged, weaving confusion into the patrol's plans without ever revealing himself. He moved to a transit hub, his pace casual, almost lazy, yet every step was mapped and precise. Surveillance cameras swept past, recording only the mundane. Marcus' mind calculated distances, escape routes, and reaction times, his experience turning prediction into instinct. A human mind, even one in disguise, could thread through the tightest net if it remained unseen, and Marcus had spent decades perfecting that art. A patrol of Glovarians turned a corner ahead. Marcus slowed, ducking behind a stack of cargo containers. The lead mercenary muttered complaints about inefficiency, irritation creeping into his voice. Marcus noted the timing of their steps, the cadence of their conversation, the subtle signs of overconfidence. Overconfidence was a weakness he could exploit without raising suspicion. The courier froze, sensing the danger. Marcus whispered a single word under his breath, barely audible, and the human moved with calculated precision, slipping along a secondary route Marcus had pre-planned. Every movement, every choice was deliberate, each designed to buy time, to confuse, to manipulate the alien patrols without confrontation. Reaching a junction, Marcus paused, listening. Comms chatter from the aliens confirmed their mounting frustration. They had failed to locate the assassin, failed to intercept the data, and failed to predict the invisible human orchestrating the scenario. Their arrogance had blinded them. They assumed brute force and size equaled dominance, ignoring the subtle advantage that humans wielded quietly: intelligence, adaptability, and patience. A flicker of movement drew his attention. Another human, a mechanic, crossed the hall, unaware of the situation. Marcus subtly adjusted his path to shield both humans from sight lines, a single step shifting the trajectory of events without detection. He was the calm at the eye of the storm, shaping chaos into advantage. The corridor opened into a wider atrium, populated with travelers, merchants, and wandering alien patrols. Marcus walked through the crowd as if nothing were happening, every gesture ordinary, every motion casual. Yet each step was a precise calculation. He anticipated patrol convergence points and had laid subtle misdirections along the route. One misplaced crate, one misaligned drone, one small flicker of power, and the patrols were chasing shadows. His eyes caught the Creston patrol advancing toward a junction near the atrium's center. Marcus slowed, calculating the timing of their steps against the courier's movement. A slight diversion, created by a strategically dropped package and a barely perceptible beam flicker, was enough to redirect the guards without alerting them. The courier slipped past safely, unseen. Marcus allowed himself a quiet acknowledgement. Success was in the details, and he had mastered the details. Yet he knew the real test had not yet begun. The alien mercenaries would not give up easily. Their pride demanded a confrontation. Marcus' mind raced ahead, preemptively tracing their responses to every contingency. He did not fear them, he had survived far worse. But he respected the potential for chaos if he underestimated a single element. The key was to remain invisible until the precise moment, when a single action could dismantle their assumptions entirely. Marcus paused at the atrium's edge, the soft hum of engines filling the space. The courier was safe for now, information secure, and yet the true danger loomed closer with each passing heartbeat. He allowed himself a brief glance at the chaos he had orchestrated from the shadows. The mercenaries growing anxious, patrols shifting direction, drones recalibrating. They were floundering, unaware that the architect of their confusion walked among them. A faint smile touched his lips, not of triumph but of acknowledgement. The hunt had intensified, but the predator remained unseen. Humans were often underestimated, but when observed closely, the truth became undeniable. Patience, calculation, and subtlety could overcome sheer size, technology, and arrogance. Marcus stepped forward, blending into the crowd as the alien patrols adjusted, oblivious to the human weaving their failures together. The storm was approaching, and when it struck, the galaxy would see why the quiet human in plain sight was the deadliest force they had ever ignored. The air in the station's central hub was electric with tension, a subtle hum of machinery mingling with the chatter of oblivious travelers. Marcus moved with deliberate patience along the edge of the crowd, his eyes catching every minor flicker of movement, every shadow cast by the overhead lights. The alien mercenaries had grown desperate. Their confidence had turned brittle, every unexplained event gnawing at their sense of control. They did not yet realize that the chaos was no accident. It was a symphony conducted by the quiet human they still refused to see. A Glovarian bellowed orders, pointing toward corridors where Marcus had already anticipated their arrival. Their segmented armor glinted, reflective surfaces catching the light, but none of them considered that their reflections might betray nothing about the true danger before them. Marcus observed the shifting patterns, calculating the minimal number of moves required to dismantle their advantage. He allowed himself a single step forward, a subtle motion that drew a flicker of notice from the nearest mercenary. It was enough to confirm his assumptions. They had no idea how vulnerable they were to someone they dismissed. Marcus' mind raced, charting exits, environmental variables, and the precise timing of every patrol. A single misstep from him and the human facade could collapse. But he had honed precision beyond what most beings imagined possible. The courier he had shepherded from the bar now crouched behind a stack of cargo containers, eyes wide, clutching the data drive that could change the balance of power. Marcus nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly, signaling that they were ready. The human moved with careful stealth, merging into the shadows, while Marcus prepared for the confrontation that had been inevitable from the moment the mercenaries entered the station. The first strike came not from Marcus, but from the environment he had manipulated. A maintenance drone, previously overlooked, sparked and swerved, colliding with one of the Creston mercenaries. Metal clanged, a brief distraction, yet it was enough. Marcus stepped forward, fluid and precise, moving through the cluster of alien mercenaries with a calm that belied the violence he was about to unleash. A Gloverian lunged toward him, a crude attempt at confrontation. Marcus sidestepped, using the mercenaries' momentum against him. A twist, a subtle push, and the alien crashed into a stack of crates, momentarily incapacitated. Another mercenary advanced, blade glinting in the overhead lights. Marcus' hand flicked a small device on the counter he had carried, sending a pulse that short-circuited the weapon's energy cells. The alien froze, startled, and Marcus used the pause to pivot, redirecting him into the path of his own companion. The atrium became a controlled storm of motion. Marcus moved like water, smooth, adaptive, lethal. He did not shout or roar. He did not rely on brute strength. Each movement was precise, calculated, exploiting every environmental factor and psychological weakness. Humans had long been underestimated for their subtlety, their ability to observe, predict, and manipulate circumstances invisible to larger, more technologically advanced species. From a distance, the mercenaries' confusion escalated. They had trained for combat, for aggression, for straightforward confrontation, but not for an invisible hand that bent reality around them. Marcus' calm, measured attacks created openings, disruptions, and diversions, fragmenting their cohesion. One by one, the mercenaries found themselves incapacitated not by brute force alone, but by strategy, timing, and a human mind operating at its apex. The courier reached the secure exit, unharmed, and glanced back at Marcus. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. The threat was neutralized, but the danger had been more than mere physical skill. It was intelligence, intuition, and foresight that had won the day. The humans had demonstrated a form of power the aliens could neither comprehend nor anticipate. Marcus paused, surveying the aftermath. Broken drones, toppled crates, and dazed mercenaries littered the atrium, the chaos precise and surgical. He allowed himself a moment to consider the alien guards nearby, still oblivious to the human they had ignored for so long. In their arrogance they had assumed dominance. In their oversight they had underestimated humanity. A Gloverian scrambled to his feet, rage contorting his features, but even now the calculation Marcus had made held true. The larger, stronger, better-armed species could not anticipate the human mind that observed, predicted, and manipulated without notice. Marcus' presence alone had dismantled their confidence, leaving them vulnerable to every subtle disruption he orchestrated. The storm had passed as quietly as it had arrived. Marcus straightened, adjusting his jacket as if nothing had happened. The atrium, once tense and chaotic, returned to its ordinary rhythm, travelers unaware that a battle had occurred in their midst. Humans had triumphed not with visible force, but with precision, patience, and an intelligence the galaxy often ignored. He caught the courier's eye one last time. The message was clear. The mission succeeded, the data secure, and humanity's presence in this sector reinforced not with displays of power, but with subtle mastery of the situation. Marcus had once again proven what Earthlings had always known. To be underestimated was humanity's greatest advantage. The alien mercenaries regrouped at the edges of the atrium, nursing bruises and pride alike. They had glimpsed, too late, the predator hidden in plain sight. Marcus moved toward the nearest exit, the crowd parting naturally, unaware of the predator weaving through their midst. The quiet bartender, the unassuming human, had become legend in the span of minutes. As he disappeared into the shadows, Marcus allowed himself a brief thought. The galaxy would learn eventually that humans could strike with devastating precision, remain invisible when necessary, and turn arrogance into vulnerability. And when that day came, no species would forget the silent predator they had overlooked. The station had settled into an uneasy calm, the echoes of chaos fading into the low hum of engines and distant chatter. Marcus Kane moved through the corridors with deliberate composure, each step measured, precise. The alien mercenaries had been neutralized, their confusion and fear leaving them scattered and cautious. Yet Marcus did not relax. There was always another threat, another ripple in the galaxy's web, and the quiet human never allowed himself to be caught unprepared. The courier trailed him at a safe distance, the data drive clutched tightly in hand. Marcus glanced back, a single nod acknowledging the human's courage and trust. In his line of work, he rarely commended anyone, yet this young agent had proven disciplined, careful, and unafraid in the presence of overwhelming danger. That small measure of respect passed silently between them, a human bond forged in subtle understanding rather than words. The alien patrols had grown cautious. Rumors of the assassin spread quickly among their ranks. They whispered of the quiet bartender, the unassuming human who had dismantled their plans without overt force. Each retelling grew, each account adding to the legend. The galaxy would remember Earth's warriors, not for brute strength alone, but for ingenuity, precision, and the ability to strike from invisibility. Marcus allowed the thought a moment of satisfaction, though his expression remained unreadable. Pride was a dangerous luxury. He reached a small observation deck overlooking the station's docking bay. Ships of every shape and size glided in and out, unaware of the predator who had moved among them. Marcus leaned lightly against the railing, letting the soft hum of machinery ground him. Here, away from immediate threat, he reflected on the mission's subtle victories. Each step, each carefully measured action had ensured the safety of the data, the lives of innocents, and the preservation of human advantage. The courier approached cautiously. "We're clear?" he asked, voice tight with relief. Marcus' eyes, dark and unyielding, met his. "For now," he replied, each word deliberate, carrying weight beyond its surface. "But the galaxy is never quiet for long. There will always be hunters, challengers, those who assume superiority. We just make sure they learn the hard way." Below, alien mercenaries regrouped, casting wary glances at the corridors Marcus had traversed. They whispered among themselves, strategizing, recalibrating, unsure how to counter the invisible hand that had toppled their plans. Marcus' mind traced their adjustments before they even finished forming, anticipating responses with the cold efficiency of a predator who had survived decades in worlds that underestimated him. A final patrol moved into his line of sight, cautious, segmented armor glinting in the dim lighting. Marcus assessed them with a casual precision. He did not need to engage directly. His presence alone had sown uncertainty, fear, and hesitation. The human mind's strength was not always visible, and that was its deadliest weapon. The courier glanced at him again, hesitant. "You're different," he said softly, admiration and awe woven into his tone. "Not like anyone else I've ever seen." Marcus allowed the smallest smirk, a fleeting glimpse of personality hidden beneath years of discipline. "Humans are often underestimated," he said. "It's why we survive, why we endure, why we win when others fail to see the whole picture. You'll understand eventually." The docking bay lights flickered as a transport vessel prepared to depart, engines humming with the promise of speed. Marcus and the courier moved toward the ship with careful steps, blending into the flow of travelers. Behind them, alien patrols hesitated, aware that the predator they sought was gone but unsure of its precise location. That uncertainty was the mark of a human victory, control without confrontation, dominance without display. As they boarded the transport, Marcus allowed a final glance at the station. The chaos he had orchestrated remained invisible to most, yet the aftermath would ripple through alien ranks for days, perhaps weeks. Stories of the quiet bartender, the lethal human, would grow in whispered rumor, shaping perception of Earthlings across the sector. He had not merely survived, he had ensured the galaxy remembered humanity's subtle supremacy. The courier seated himself, still wide-eyed. Marcus followed, settling into the shadows of the cabin. The engines roared, propelling them into the void between stars, and Marcus allowed himself a rare thought of anticipation. More missions awaited, more adversaries would rise, but for now, Earth's agent had proven once again that intelligence, patience, and precision could overcome even the most formidable of foes. In the quiet of the transport, Marcus allowed a faint, satisfied smile. He had not needed to roar, to brandish weapons, or to announce his presence. Humans thrived in the unnoticed spaces, and he had leveraged that invisible advantage flawlessly. The galaxy might not yet fully comprehend the predator hiding behind unremarkable appearances, but they would learn. One day, every species would remember that underestimation was a perilous mistake. The stars streaked past the viewport, infinite and cold, yet Marcus' presence brought an invisible warmth. A reminder that humanity, patient and calculating, could dominate in ways no alien could predict. The courier glanced at him once more, tentative, awestruck, yet Marcus said nothing, letting the silence convey what words could not. As the transport slipped into the quiet void of interstellar travel, Marcus' final thought lingered, calm and resolute. the galaxy had underestimated humans once again. And each time it did, humans would prove why they were the apex predators, not through sheer force alone, but through patience, intellect, and the quiet certainty of those who move unseen yet strike decisively. The ship vanished into the darkness, leaving the station behind, and Marcus Kane remained as he always had been: invisible, unassuming, unstoppable.